Hello and welcome back to the house in Fata Morgana. Last time Morgana started telling us her story, and I'm wondering, does she only do it because someone finally asked, or does she want to, make Michelle sympathize with her so that he will be on her side? I don't know. I would suspect the latter, but whichever way, let's continue. Blood of the Holy One. You're a damned witch wearing a saint's skin. Maybe if I had died then, I wouldn't have become the witch you know now. But that's all conjecture. Theorizing about what could have happened is an exercise in futility. But no, I did not die that day. Brought together by constant mistreatment, the Lord's slaves chose that moment to start their revolt. When he swung down his blade, someone bumped into him and it was knocked off its course. I didn't have the strength to get to my feet, so I simply watched the chaos unfold before my hazy eyes. It never even occurred to me that I should try to escape. At some point during the riot, a young man, one of the slaves, grabbed me by my bloody, limp arm and led me out of the Lord's manor. The young man brought me to a slum, a place where the people banded together in their hardship, barely scraping together enough to eat every day, let alone pay the taxes demanded of them. By the time we had arrived at a small brothel located a ways into the slum, the fog was starting to clear from my mind. I knew where we were, and feeling the gazes of those scantily clothed women, I trembled. In a sense, that was possibly the most frightened I had ever been in my life, despite everything else I had been through. The idea that I had fallen so far I would have to become a prostitute scared me to death. After all, I was a saint, and saints were supposed to retain their purity. How old was she at this point? Still just a teenager? Like the young teen? Spreading my legs for any man who gave me enough coins would shatter my very identity. As all that was going through my mind, I probably shouted no in protest. Because the slave gave me an exasperated look and told me he hadn't brought me here to become a prostitute. He said he knew someone here, someone I could trust, and that she would give me a room. I had trouble believing him though. I couldn't trust the word of a prostitute, someone who valued money more than her body. It was all a trap, I was sure. One day they would tell me I had to work. Nothing he said would convince me otherwise. Apparently sensing my mistrust, the slave gave me an apologetic frown and handed me a mirror, saying, "Even if I did, you couldn't get any work looking like that." I could not believe what I saw. That couldn't be my face. It had to be an illusion. There was no way. That was not the face of a saint. It couldn't be. It wasn't real. It wasn't possible. Patches of skin had fallen off my face, exposing the raw red flesh beneath. It looked quite similar to what had been done to my arms and legs. Except my face had never been cut before. Looking at myself in the mirror, even I doubted my own sainthood. The thing in my reflection was a hellish abomination. It was the twisted face of a witch. And although I was shocked by what I saw, at the same time it answered several lingering questions. It explained why the Lord and his guests had panicked at the sight of me. And it also explained why he had said I was a witch wearing a saint's skin. Over the course of the dozens of banquets I had participated in, my face must have mutated, twisted into this ugly, sickening, monstrous thing. The sight of what I had become sapped the last bit of willpower from me. Not because I was particularly fond of my face or thought myself especially beautiful, but because it crushed me to see everything saintly about me crumble away. Test from God or otherwise, I didn't have the strength left to attempt to overcome it. Deciding I would rather be dead than struggle any longer, I begged the slave to kill me. Taking one's own life was a sin. If I did that, I would not be able to return to my father's side, and I wanted to ask him why I had been put through such tribulation. But the young man refused. He said, completely missing my intention, that if I persevered, good fortune would eventually find me. He said that if I lived on, I would eventually have a chance to get my payback. I had no such worldly concerns though, but if no one would take my life, I had no choice but to live. I despised life at the brothel. The men who came to buy their services were disgusting buffoons, the kind of people who would think they could deceive God. And the women fawning over them were just as repulsive. That said, I had nowhere else to go, which meant I was forced to suffer that sickening place. But by the time a year or so had passed, my feelings about it had changed. The women of the brothel took good care of me, treating me like a sister. At first, it was just irritating. I was a saint, and how could a saint have prostitutes for sisters? But over time, I got to know them better, grew to appreciate their circumstances and hardships. Despite barely having enough money to keep food on the table, whenever they had a little to spare, they would use it to purchase medicine. Ointments to apply to my arms, legs, and face. And as a result of their generosity, my arms and legs started looking almost human, but nothing had any effect on my face. Occasionally, the slave would drop in to check on me. The other men thought me ghastly and wouldn't get anywhere near me, but he was different. And every time he visited, he would say, "One day I'll show you the world." And to tell you the truth, I was beginning to grow attached to it all. My time at the brothel was probably, all things considered, one of the brighter chapters of my life. There, I was neither saint nor witch, but an ordinary human girl. For the first time, I felt like my life had meaning beyond my assumed divine purpose. I was even beginning to feel kind of happy. And with each passing day, my intractable worldview was gaining a little flexibility. Perhaps I could perform miracles, but that didn't necessarily mean I had to be the daughter of God or a saint. Maybe I was just a regular person who happened to possess some unusual abilities. Ridiculous, isn't it? Despite coming to accept my humanity, I refused to let go of my miraculous powers. They were the last thing protecting what I thought of as myself. But to me at the time, it felt like a very dramatic change of heart. 3 years after the revolt at the Lord's Manor, I had my 12th birthday, for which they threw me a little dinner party. Okay, yeah, so I actually misremember, and she was 9 when she was brought to the brothel, so thinking then she would have to work there. I mean, either way, would probably be very scary to be forced into it. But yeah, as a kid, yeah. But as every of our protagonists of the stories we've seen so far, there were always some uplifting parts in their story, and yeah, I mean, we know she will not have a happy end, right? Sadly. The women all pitched in to bake me treats, and the young slave man was there too. I was happy. I thought that if life could continue on like this, I was fine with not going back to being a saint. But for some reason, happiness always seems to slip away as soon as you've got your hands around it. No one sincerely wants to lose it, so why must they? I certainly didn't mind not being miserable. Let me tell you what happened that night. On the night of my birthday celebration, bandits attacked the brothel. Now, bandits were hardly a rarity in that time, so everyone was always on the lookout, and we never went out at night. They wouldn't stop at robbing you either. They were armed with blades and would frequently kill their targets if necessary. But cautious as we were helpless against a direct raid. The brothel fell into a panic, screams echoing in the night. The customers were carved up and left for dead. The women were bound and stowed away to be sold. My peaceful world shattered in an instant. And the next thing I knew, I was some slave trader's merchandise. I don't know what became of the prostitutes who cared for me, or the slave who brought me to them. I assume the women were sold and the young men slaughtered. But regardless, I found myself being rocked around in the back of a carriage once more. The carriage was packed so tight you could barely see the floor, and it smelled like death. Sweat, urine, feces, every foul odor imaginable compressed into a tiny space. There were both men and women there, nearly all of them muttering or groaning or weeping. Everyone was young, ripe to be put to work. It didn't take me long to realize what fate awaited these people, and me. And when I did, I just sat there in silence. Then, for the first time, I cried. I was experiencing, I believe, a very human emotion. I was sad. Hurt that I had been taken away from a place where I was happy. From the women at the brothel and that young man. It crushed me. And no longer did I wonder why such a thing was happening to the holy daughter of God. Something about my tears must have seemed strange to him, because one man saw me and said, "Why are you crying?" He was a curious man. To start, he looked very different from anyone else. The color of his skin, the length of his nose, the shape of his eyes. Everything about him was new and unusual. Hesitantly, I replied, "I'm sad because I didn't get the chance to show my gratitude to people very dear to me." The man fell silent, looking as though he was deep in thought. I had no idea why he had asked me that, but something about him made me uncomfortable, so I couldn't bring myself to ask. Several hours later, the man suddenly stood up. The guards had no patience for anyone stepping out of line, and they didn't look like they would hesitate to kill us either. So, unsurprisingly, one at the back of the carriage drew his sword and pointed it at the man. What was surprising, though, was what happened next. The man, his hands shackled like the rest of us, leaped for the guard, slamming his fists into his face and stealing his sword. The entire carriage was in shock. The guards were too stunned to effectively react, so they were quickly cut down. And because the one-man uprising had taken place between cities, there was no one the slave traders could ask for help before they were slaughtered. In the blink of an eye, it was all over. And there was nothing human about what I had witnessed. If I had to describe it, I would say it was as though a wild beast had attacked. The man ruffled through the slave trader's clothes until he found the keys, which he brought to me, ordering I unshackle him. And so I did, as he commanded. Once they had had enough time to process what had happened, the would-be slaves applauded. Their wretched souls had been saved. And for a moment, I believed so too. When the man's hands were free, he rolled his shoulders a couple times, made sure everything was in place, and then he began his massacre. Screams of agony filled the carriage as he ran his sword through the helpless men and women packed inside it. Blood and guts were splattered against every surface. And those who tried to escape did not get far before being mercilessly skewered. It was like a scene out of a nightmare. I was frozen in place, not out of fear, but because my mind had shut down. I couldn't make sense of what was happening, so my mind rejected it. And with my brain having given up, my body was no more than a lifeless puppet. In short order, all the slaves were dead, and I was sitting in a pool of blood, staring at the man. He pointed his blade at me, and with a little smirk said, "Why didn't you run?" In turn, I asked him, "Why did you kill them?" The smile vanished from his face, and after a few quiet moments of pondering, he replied, "Because I felt like it." "And why haven't you killed me yet?" I asked. To which he gave a curt, "I don't know," then withdrew his blade and wandered off into the distance. And then I was all alone, surrounded by corpses. I glanced down, and half of someone's face was looking back up at me. Wow. Now that's a story. Wrapped in absolute darkness. Warm blood spills onto my cheeks, my hair, my skin. Chunks of human flesh rain down on me. Make it stop. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter. There's no end to the deluge. The smell of death fills the air, I'm struck with a wave of nausea so strong I can't hold back the contents of my stomach. But when my mouth opens to vomit, blood pours into it. Let go of me. Dead bodies grab at my ankles, dragging me down. To where? Hell, or to the mountain of corpses? Now do you understand that there was a time, if but briefly, when I was happy, when I felt human emotions? But I wish I never had. If I had remained confined in my Daughter of God shell, then I doubt I would have felt so much terror at the sight of death. I can't say anything in response. I can't form words. I feel what she experienced, the massacre she witnessed, the limp flesh piling up around her. Even more than twice her age, it's enough to drive me mad. The fact that a 12-year-old girl had to experience something so unspeakable devastates me. Tell me, my dear, do you pity me? Do you sympathize with me? If you feel bad for me, then you'll remain with me. You'll feel my pain and my despair with me, won't you? The witch's cackle echoes through the pile of bodies. There's not a speck of light, and hideous death lingers everywhere. Helpless to resist, I'm dragged down into a deep, dark ocean. An ocean of blood. Yeah, I told you, that's our goal here. That's our goal with this story. I mean, no matter if it's completely true or not, I would think it is true. Just... yeah, because, I mean, we knew something must have happened to her to have her become the witch. So... yeah, and to start with so much... I don't even have words for it, but all this mess when she was so young, that wouldn't mess anyone up. Especially if it started when she was a child, so... Ooh. Now, on with the story. I was at a complete loss for some time after that. I didn't want to return to the city because I knew there was no one left who would take me in. There was only the Lord who had bound me and drained me of my blood. So I wandered the roads, no destination in mind and nothing to defend myself but the clothes on my back. Frankly, I'm rather surprised I wasn't attacked by bandits. After walking for days without food or water, my mind was hazy and my exhaustion at a peak. In the distance, I saw a lake. So driven by my thirst, I turned my unsteady feet toward the water, not caring that it took me off the main road. And it turned out that was the correct choice, because there was a small cottage beside the lake. Smoke rising from the chimney, telling me it wasn't abandoned. Out of sheer desperation, I knocked on the door. No one answered. The door wasn't locked, so I slowly, hesitantly pushed it open. And beyond it, I found an old woman sitting dead in a chair. The woman was a witch. By trade, that is. It appeared she had had a deep knowledge of medicinal herbs, using it to make an assortment of medicines. In her cabinets were dozens of small glass bottles containing dried, powdered leaves and crushed berries, among other things. On the fire was a cauldron, liquid bubbling inside. The woman looked as though she was asleep. Presumably, she had passed away of old age, for there was no sign bandits had been rooting through the cottage, and she had a look of absolute serenity on her face. Looking over at the woman's dead body, I didn't cross myself. I envied her. Dragging the woman's body by her feet, I dumped her into the lake. Do you think doing so makes me a bad person? Makes me unsaintly? No, but it makes me feel you just, contaminated the water? Right? Well, I didn't have anywhere else to go, and the owner of the cozy cottage was no longer of this world. There was no reason I couldn't fill the home in her stead, was there? I deserved to have somewhere I felt comfortable after everything I'd been through, didn't I? And so, I took up residence in the old witch's cottage, and remained there until my 16th year. By 16, a terrible cynicism had taken root in my heart. I had no trust for people. I shut them out, building high walls around myself. After such a tumultuous, bloody childhood, it was all I could do to protect myself, to keep my young spirit from cracking. Nevertheless, travelers would, on occasion, pay the old witch's cottage a visit, seeking her medicines. Whenever someone arrived, I would cautiously crack the door open, telling them they could trade for whatever they wanted with food, and never showing my face. One day, a young man showed up at the cottage. My sister has fallen very ill, and she desperately needs medicine. He was very soft-spoken. There was a distinct kindness in his voice, which I thought unusual, curious. What kind of person could he be? What did he look like? What expressions did he make as he spoke? To satisfy that curiosity, I snuck a peek at him through the crack in the door. He was a handsome young man with flowing flaxen hair. And upon seeing me, he didn't flinch back in disgust. He smiled. According to him, his younger sister had fallen gravely ill, and though they had tried a number of remedies, she was still bedridden. A young man with flaxen hair and a sister? I see you. The medicines I gave him too had no effect, but he persisted in his quest, visiting me again and again for new combinations to try. He wanted nothing more than to relieve even the slightest bit of his sister's suffering. And, moved by his dedication to his family, I too wanted to do anything I could to help. For the first time in years, my world encompassed more than my small cottage. When the young man came, he would ask not only for medicine, but to go on walks with me. He volunteered to spend time with me, despite my horrifying appearance. It's not healthy to stay holed up inside all the time. We've got this beautiful lake right here. What do you say we take a little walk around the shoreline?" He said with a smile, taking me by the hand. We spoke as we circled the lakeside. His voice was always soft and pleasant, like a ray of light shining through a crack in the walls. When I was with him, I felt like I could be an actual person, an ordinary girl. He talked about his sister more than anything. And whenever he did, he was at his brightest and most melancholic. The young man had been a member of a noble house, but disputes over who was the rightful heir had forced him and his sister out. Shortly after that, his sister had fallen ill and was now bedridden. "I'll take anything at this point to make her better. I'll even take a miracle if I can get one." That word, muttered beneath his breath, sparked my memory. I was a saint. My blood had healing properties. I had no reason to hesitate. Someone needed my help, and who deserved it more than this kind-hearted young man's sister? So I decided to tell him what I really was. That my blood had miraculous powers, that it had saved people. That the moment I had been born, the drought plaguing my village had come to an end. That I had been known as a saint, the daughter of God. I told him everything. And he believed it all. He led me to his house, where a pale, sickly young girl lay in bed. She was a sweet little girl with the same flaxen hair as her brother, who looked like she would have been quite spirited if not for her ailment. It was touching to see the two siblings sitting there together, quietly holding each other. I would gladly give my blood for the two of them. And so I made a new cut on my arm, which had healed considerably thanks to the slave and the women of the brothel, and let the girl drink of my blood. Neither of them had any doubts about my sainthood. And because they believed, a miracle occurred. The flaxen-haired girl recovered enough to get out of her bed. I was extremely proud of myself. I felt like, for once, I had actually saved someone's life. The only issue was, she didn't make a complete recovery. For a few days after drinking my blood, she was in good health, but her condition quickly regressed. I was deeply perplexed by this. A miracle had undoubtedly taken place, but it was only temporary. Now, though, I believe I can explain what happened. Her recovery was nothing more than a placebo effect caused by her faith. But that's something I couldn't have known at the time. We were all three perplexed, and we were all three disheartened. Nevertheless, I was prepared to give her my blood as many times as needed. Whenever her condition worsened, the young man came to request more, and never once did I turn him away. On the contrary, I enthusiastically offered her my services. Over time, though, the hope in his eyes began to fade. He asked me on fewer walks, and he seemed hesitant to look me in the eye. I assumed it was out of discomfort, out of guilt, out of shame about asking for blood. But I don't think his concerns were for me, rather himself and his sister. As I mentioned earlier, blood was considered unclean in our time. And not only was I giving mine away, I was having his sister imbibe it. Looking at it that way, it would hardly be a surprise for him or anyone else to think what I was doing depraved. As time passed, the flaxen-haired young man seemed to grow more and more disturbed by me. That was what I got for opening up. That was what I got for letting his kind, warm light shine in on me. The moment things went bad, he pulled away. There were times when I thought I shouldn't have done anything in the first place, but regardless, I held fast to my original decision. I would put myself on the line for them. No one else. Just them. Even if he was afraid of me or had no interest in seeing me, I would continue offering her my blood. And I was firm in my resolve. One day, though, I received a new visitor. The young man was still the only one I would show my face to, the only guest I had let into my walls. So, as usual, I took the man's request from behind the cottage door. But I could hardly believe my ears when he began speaking. "Are you the witch with the miracle blood?" Wow, thanks, bro. You would think, especially if he came to the realization that it's kind of, depraved in their words to do all this, that he wouldn't tell anyone. But oh well, I guess secrets come out either way, especially like in nobles' houses where there's servants around to hear everything, or I don't know. First, how did he know my blood had powers? Second, why had he called me a witch and not a saint? Third, why did he sound like the man who had slaughtered the slave carriage? I told the man he had to leave, that I would not be opening the door for any reason. In response, he said, "I am in need of your blood. Could you not spare a little?" My blood was for the sick and needy. I would never spare a drop for a murderer like him. And I told the man exactly that, demanding he leave. All I could think about was the pile of bodies, the fountain of blood. The man drenched in crimson, wearing a ghastly smirk. I trembled behind the door, fearing he may go on another such rampage. But instead he gave a simple, "As you say," and went on his way. I let out a deep sigh of relief, which is when I realized tears were rolling down both of my cheeks. Like an ordinary girl. Is he the beast then? I was wondering before, but it seemed odd the way it was described, but it would make sense. 3 days later, the flaxen-haired boy showed up at my cottage. "I'm sorry for being so distant lately. I want to talk things over." Those 2 sentences were like a light shining from above. I wanted to talk to him too. I wanted to take a walk around the lake and listen to him talk about nothing. I wanted to experience the warmth of his world once more. And I wanted to tell him about the terrible man who had been there a few days earlier. About how scared I had been. I wanted him to tell me it would be all right. I want to talk to you too, I said, opening the door without a second thought. The light of the sun was so bright, all I could make out was a silhouette. I couldn't see the look on his face, or the look in his eyes. A gentle breeze blew past, and my mind froze. How could this be happening? What did it mean? Why? How? What was that man doing, standing behind him? Why was he carrying a sword? Why was he coming into my house? And why did he swing it down, severing my arm? I was in a daze. I couldn't make sense of anything. I didn't want to. My left arm fell to the floor before I even knew what was happening, and then my legs gave out. The pain, searing and unbearable, came a few moments later, as I was lying in an ever-expanding pool of my own blood. I did something then that I hadn't done before, that I had resisted doing no matter how much blood the Lord had stolen from me. I screamed. It was a hideous, visceral noise, a sound I had never thought a saint could make. The same ear-splitting howl the slaves had made as the man had butchered them. I writhed, I wailed, I wept, I crawled across the floor through my own blood. I begged and I begged and I begged for my life. The man walked over and picked up my severed arm. And then, shockingly, he tossed it to the kind-hearted young man. After which he said, "That's your share. Should last you long enough." Share? What did he mean by share? What was he talking about? Why had he given my arm, and why had he taken it? Why was he talking like they knew each other? Why? I had spared blood for him when he asked, hadn't I? So why was he doing this? Was cutting my arm off and stealing it easier on his conscience than simply asking? You understand how I felt, don't you? You can put yourself in my shoes, can't you? The young man refused to look me in the eye. Holding my bloody arm in his trembling hands, he fled from the cottage as quickly as his legs would allow. The man then walked over and picked me up. I had neither the strength nor willpower to resist. Holding me in his arms, he began to speak, telling me things I didn't want to know, things I didn't want to hear. But he didn't care. Nothing personal, I just need your blood. Without it, she'll lose her church. Don't take it personally. Tell me, is there anyone in this world who wouldn't feel a bit of spite after being put through such torture? How was I supposed to let that slide? No one's that much of a saint. My trust had been betrayed, and I was supposed to turn the other cheek. A man had barged into my home uninvited and cut off my arm, and I was supposed to smile and take it? Is there anyone, anywhere, who doesn't feel even the slightest bit of hatred ever? Is there anyone in this world who could just love and brush off this level of abuse? Tell me, is there? How could I not hold a grudge? How could I not despise them? How could I possibly forgive them? Tell me, please. Tell me, how could I? She needs the money. I needed some way of getting enough money to keep her church running. So the Lord made me an offer. If I brought him the witch with the miracle blood, he would finance a whole new church for her. The Lord? Why him again? Why couldn't he leave me alone? After trying to kill me during one of his blood Sabbaths, why was he after my blood once more? Had he learned it really did have miraculous powers and decided he wanted me back? You get to be the sacrifice. To keep her church from collapsing. To keep her world from collapsing. Sacrifice? Excuse me, what? And what's all this about keeping her church from collapsing? You murdered a carriage full of innocent people. And you're trying to protect the church? You? Are you out of your mind? Churches are where people go to commune with God. To speak with my Father. How dare you soil those sanctified grounds with your filthy hands, you beast! It's insulting, sacrilegious, repulsive. Just what do you think we are?
So don't take it personally, witch.
I'm not a witch. I'm a saint. I was a saint. My blood exists to do the Lord's work, not to satisfy the avarice of men. Why is this happening to me? The man brought me back to the city. But instead of taking me to the Lord's manor, he brought me to the church on the city's outskirts. Though, to be honest, it looked more like an estate than a church. The church also served as a hospital, offering free care to less fortunate children, the poor, and the infirm. That was when I learned why he had said they needed money. The owner of the church offered unconditional assistance to anyone who came. Even when food and supplies ran low, they would ration their own in order to keep helping others. As a result, the church was perpetually on the verge of collapse. The church was run by a woman, something exceedingly rare for the time. There were no priests. All management was handled by a single nun, who everyone referred to as the saintess. I was the saint. Why was this woman who didn't have the ability to perform miracles being worshipped like she did? Why did the people of the city idolize her? Why were their smiles all directed at her? Why was I not in her place? The man carried me to the top of the observation tower. It was there that I had my reunion with the Lord. I was to spill my blood for the people of the city, but also for the Lord's prophet. He was not offering free aid, but selling it as medicine. He claimed it was a miracle elixir, telling no one that it was actually my blood. It was mixed with a beautiful red wine, and drinking it would cure you of any ailment. If they knew it was actually the blood of a witch, they would think it unclean. They would fear it. I remained imprisoned for a long, long time. In the beginning, the swordsman guarded me, though before long, a flaxen-haired young man showed up as well. Presumably one severed arm wasn't enough to keep a sister healthy for long. In listening to their conversations, I learned that to ensure no one else could get in, the observation tower was sealed with 3 locks. The Lord, the swordsman, and the young man each held one of the keys. I was their secret, locked away in the tower for them to drain off blood away from wandering eyes. Time went on, and I grew progressively weaker. I lost the will to eat and the will to live. My only view from the tower was the clouds through a window high up on the wall. Occasionally, a pigeon would fly in, sometimes a butterfly, and I would glare in envy as it fluttered around, free to come and go as it pleased. And soon, it was spring. I'm actually surprised she even survived for that long with a severed arm, like on top of all of her previous injuries. Gee. Every spring, the church held a festival to pray for the coming year's harvest and the people's well-being. I could hear the bustle from far below through the window as everyone rushed to prepare. I heard the flaxen-haired girl's voice, who had regained her health drinking my blood. I heard her brother's voice, who had betrayed me. I heard the nun's voice, who played saint in my stead. Oh, I'm having a thought. Is the nun maybe the white-haired girl? I was wondering at the start of this episode if maybe Morgana is actually the white-haired girl. Many possibilities. I heard the barbaric swordsman's voice who had chopped off my arm. And I heard the Lord's voice, the root of all my suffering. I heard people praising the saintess, though I, the true saint, was locked in the tower. I heard people thanking the Lord for his generous donations and miracle medicine, though it had all come from me. Propped up on my suffering, they cheered and clinked glasses of my bloody wine. Those merry, peaceful, cheerful, spirited sinners' voices resounded in my tower. And at noon on the day of the festival, the church bell tolled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and with the 12th chime, I died. As the bell's last pealing faded into silence, the tower door swung open. Standing on the other side of it were the 3 men. They must have wanted to drain a little more from me to use in the feast. But they arrived at the worst possible moment. The flaxen-haired young man was the first to express his consternation. Why? I never wanted her to die. Was she not eating? The Lord gave my corpse a casual glance and said, stone-faced,
"Seal the tower off. Understood? No one finds out about this."
"How can you be so calm? Do you understand what you've done?"
Huh. Pinning the blame on me? How nice it must be to be able to distort reality with panic.
The swordsman, who had been silently observing the Lord and the boy conversing, interjected.
"You're just as guilty as any of us."
Not only did they not mourn my death, they argued over whose fault it was. There was no regret, no remorse. The young man muttered absent-mindedly, I never wanted her to die." What did his intentions matter, though? It was his betrayal that had ultimately tethered me to this mansion. But the fact that they didn't grieve my death, and instead squabbled amongst themselves like filthy rats, was the final straw. How could I not despise them? I don't believe I actually had the power to perform miracles when I was alive. It was all faith, the illusion of belief. I was neither a saint nor a witch. The blood wine was only effective because people placed their faith in the other saintess. I was only ever human. But then, in that moment, an actual miracle occurred. My father bestowed upon me his power. Or perhaps it was the devil who lent me his strength. I was looking down upon my own dead body, my own wretched self. There was nothing beautiful about the pile of bones I had become. I could almost smell the rotting flesh. That was once a saint? I laughed at the thought. It was absurd, ridiculous, and infuriating. They would pay, those who had cast me into this hell, who had mocked me, who had done this to me, who had made a witch out of me. Hatred coursed through me, revulsion at everyone on these grounds still smiling. They would know just whose dead shoulders their little party was resting upon. If they wanted so badly to call me a witch, then a witch I would be. I would kill them, every last one of them, place a curse on their souls. And so I made my wish. Most people might consider it a curse, but to me it was most certainly a wish. And my father, or maybe the devil, granted that wish. From the garden there rose a scream. The flaxen-haired young man knew that voice better than anyone. He went deathly pale, darting down the spiral staircase until he reached a window. A young girl was on her knees, vomiting blood in the grass. The young man let out a yelp as he descended the remainder of the staircase. As soon as he reached the garden, he lifted the girl in his arms. But she had already perished. Realizing this, he cried to the heavens, saying the one thing he should have kept to himself. The witch killed her. The blood of the witch killed my sister.
That wine you're drinking is no medicine. It's the blood of the witch. You're all drinking witch blood. Crushed by the loss of his only family, the young man picked up a silver fork and plunged it into his own throat, ending his life. A fork? Surely you could have picked a knife, but okay. Naturally, there was an uproar. Goblets of wine crashed against the earth in rapid succession, as the people holding them fell to the ground and vomited or convulsed. The nun was the first target of their outrage. What she claimed to be medicine had turned out to be blood, an unclean substance. The blood of a witch, no less. A servant of the church, a servant of the Lord, had given her followers blood to drink. And at this, their indignation surged uncontrollably. The people surrounded her, tying her up and throwing her to the ground. As they prepared to inflict righteous justice upon her, the swordsman soared down the stairs and into the garden, plunging his blade into anyone standing near the nun. The cries of agony ringing through the church grounds were ear-splitting. It was no longer a place of God, but hell on earth. Hell built up by the hands of man. Hell painted red with the blood of their brothers. The people armed themselves with anything they could find and went after the man. As much of a beast as he may have been, he stood little chance against such numbers. It is the fate of a beast to be exterminated by those he terrorizes. And once he was gone, the nun had no one left to protect her. She too was consumed by their frenzy. All that remained was an inextinguishable inferno. Hysteria and despair, madness and outrage, and no outlet for it. It was a revolt that made the slaves' uprising at the Lord's Manor look like a game. Eventually, their rage found a new target, the Lord. It was only natural, for he was the true villain. He was the one who had given money and the witch's blood to the church. He was the one who had profited of it. And above all, people often resented those who stood above them, particularly in times of unrest. The city resounded with cries for the Lord's head, and he looked down upon it all from the safety of the observation tower. He could do nothing but watch as his domain burned. I can only imagine how painful that must have been. But before long, having seemingly have made his peace, he began descending the spiral staircase. He opened the door at the bottom, revealing himself to his people. But before the door had swung all the way open, before he had a chance to say his final words, someone ran a blade through his chest. With that, the raging furor mostly settled down, but it was hardly the end of the destruction. Mere days later, a plague befell the city. Dreadful black spots covered the flesh of the infected. They writhed in pain, screaming and vomiting blood. Ghastly howls echoed through the streets, as though the whole city had been possessed. It became a cursed land. In their diseased haze, the people muttered again and again, We have been cursed by the witch. In less than a week, the entire city was dead. My body was left abandoned at the top of the observation tower. And as if to seal the curse away in their final days, the people shuttered all the windows, wrapping the house in darkness. It's possible that was no miracle either. You can easily explain what happened to them. Locked away for so long in that dirty tower, maybe I caught some kind of disease. And then, when the people drank my blood, they too were infected. Hardly anything out of the ordinary about that. The first to die, the girl, had already been ill. Her body merely chose the worst possible time to yield to her ailment. That was all that happened. Indeed, it was nothing more than a fluke, an improbable stroke of luck, an unbelievably unfortunate accident for the city and those 3 men, and an indescribably fortunate accident for myself. But I wish to believe it was a miracle. That even if my blood didn't have healing properties, and even if I wasn't a saint, my wish, my curse, was what caused that uprising. That was my miracle. Granted to me by God, or the devil. I choose to believe that. And that my miracle took on its true form thereafter. My curse had brought death upon the 3 men, but for whatever reason, my rancour was far from sated. They had died. So what? Death is but a transient agony. It's nothing compared to what I went through. So I made my next wish. I wished for their reconstruction. I wished eternal suffering on their souls. I wished to trap them in a never-ending cycle of pain and hatred. This was my wish for the flaxen-haired young man. He treasured his dear sister and he desired a quiet life. So I wished for him to have just that. And I wished for his dearly beloved sister to love him more than anything in the world. For his world to be destroyed by love gone too far. This was my wish for the beast-like man. He was conscious of his tendency for violence, and he yearned to be more human. So I had his inner beast toned up just a little. I saw to it that he would never be human, so he would never have the peace he so desired. My wish for the Lord was more straightforward. He seemed to have great affection for wealth and authority, so I ensured those were the only things he could ever have. Who needs love or friendship when you could be drowning in power? Once he had lost everything, his solitude would be his only companion. Wishes can come true. As long as you always hold fast, never stop wishing, never surrender, they can come true. Eternal suffering on all their souls. An endless cycle of reconstruction and unavoidable tragedy. Tell me, my dear, do you sympathize with me? Will you curse them with me
Will you take my hand and revile them with me? Is that a choice? Because, yes, I sympathize with you, but that doesn't mean it's okay to curse people like that. I think we can all agree on that. Especially because other people would be sucked into that whole thing. Because it was never just those three men who suffered in their stories, it was people around them as well. This time, when my body crashes into the tower stairs, I'm unable to make a noise. The obstruction is less mental and more physical. The excruciating pain. It's so intense I can't even eke out a scream. My vision is distorted. My mind thick with fog. I feel like I'll fall into a bottomless pit if I loosen my grip on my consciousness even slightly. Through the haze, I see my own severed left arm, reflected in a pool of blood. I see my face, large chunks of flesh peeled off. Look at you, trying to crawl up those stairs like a worm. How pathetic. It's like I'm looking at my old self. I can barely form a coherent thought. I can't lament her inhuman fate, can't mourn for her, or be shocked by the revelation about the three men and her history with them. Pain. It fills every corner of my mind, every nook and cranny of my body. You've figured it out by now, haven't you, my dear? You'll never make it to me. It's not possible. But it's not your fault. It's not because you're weak. There's simply no one who can bear this pain. You're allowed to give up, to rest. There's nothing wrong with that. The pain, the crushing weight, it's miserable, isn't it? But all you have to do is turn back, and it'll all go away. The witch whispers her sweet temptations. You've put in a fine effort. There's no shame at all in throwing in the towel. Her voice is soft, gentle, pleasant, saccharine. Concede defeat. If I do, it'll all go away. The searing pain spreading from the stump of my left arm. The sensation of being perpetually drained of my blood. The miserable solitude of staring at a door that never opens. The laughter I can hear through the window. My miserable wailing and this maddening hatred. I can end it all. That's right. It will all be over. You have the power to make it stop. Make it all stop. No. I can't let that happen. No, I have to.
get her back at my side. I'll do anything to take her back, even if it means I end up 1,000 tiny scraps of meat. I will not give up on her for any reason. You won't, will you? Oh, such beautiful resolve. Willing to sacrifice yourself to save the girl. Like a hero of legend. Or maybe a fairy tale prince? No. I am no hero, and I am no prince. I am a human, an ordinary man. I don't have any extraordinary potential. I'm not a courageous leader or a charismatic general. I'm just a regular man, in love with a regular woman, who refuses to lose her. I don't need any other accomplishment, only that. That's all I need, because I'm just a regular man. My one act of resistance. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how much you cut me up. Nothing changes what I have to do. I have to take her back and set her free of this mansion. Nothing else. And never will I back down on that. Interesting. I kind of thought we would get a choice there, which would obviously have been a bad end if we took Morgana up on ending the pain. But, you know, interesting choice. Arms or no, as long as I can move, I must push forward. I must make my way to the woman who waited for me for so long. Up. To the top of the tower. Forward. Ever forward. Ever onward. Dragging my bloody body, paying the pain no mind, I once more arrive at the top of the observation tower. I place my hand on the door, holding myself up with my lacerated right arm. Take a moment to catch my breath, then lift my head, gaze into the void, and shout her name. Morgana! I pity you. I truly do. You were a saint shackled with an unfathomable fate, and for that I am enraged. As I felt your pain, as I watched your life, I too felt a burning hatred for those 3 men. If you truly feel that way, then why can't you stay here with me? We're all dead anyway. We've reached our ends. Do you honestly think there's anything more for us? There isn't. The end is the end. So what do you say, the 3 of us, me, you, and Giselle? Torture the 3 of them and everyone they cared about. Make them suffer here for all eternity in this house. And that way, you and Giselle can be together forever too. That's not an option. Why not? Because hatred only brings you pain.
Oh, that's brilliant. You spouting stupid platitudes at me. I can't believe my ears. Save your nonsense moralizing about how hatred does you no good. I won't hear it. I'm doing just fine for myself, my dear. In fact, I've never been better. I feel wonderful. Did you think that would be enough to persuade me? Really? Ah, how disappointing. And here I thought you understood me.
Morgana.
Why don't you say what you really think? Go right on ahead, hate them as much as you want. But keep me and Giselle out of it. Why didn't you just say that?
I do feel bad, truthfully. For all the time we spent together, never once did I ask about your life. I was so focused on myself. And in the end, I pushed you away.
That you did. You wanted to be with Giselle, so you pushed me out.
I wish I had asked you sooner.
It wouldn't have changed anything, though. One puny man knowing what I went through would hardly be enough to erase the loathing I bear. It would have turned out the same regardless. There was nothing you could have done for me. There is nothing.
Still, I would like to apologize. Had I known what you carried in your heart, perhaps I could have chosen my words better. Instead of rejecting you, I could have chosen some other response. I cannot remain in this house, nor can I allow her to stay either. So I would like to apologize for both my past actions and my present.
Well, in that case, open the door, Michel.
I take another moment to catch my breath, and then I gather my strength into the hand on the door. Blood seeps from my fingertips, slowly trickling down the rough surface. It reminds me of my death. I'm coming for you. I push open the door, praying that it will be the last. That beyond it lies light for Giselle. And if possible, that it might cast a bit of light on Morgana's heart as well. However, why am I in my bedroom? What I find behind the door is the last thing I expect. Huh? As she appears from the shadows of my chambers, I can't conceal my surprise. Giselle? Is this another illusion, Morgana? No, it's not. I am the real me. Thank you for coming all the way here for me. She's thanking me. So why isn't she smiling?
That was very kind and courageous of you, Michel. I'm deeply moved you would have such compassion not only for her, but for someone like me. But do you know what else you are? You're a worm.
What is it this time, Morgana?
What do you say we pull back the curtain, my dear?
What curtain?
There's one detail that hasn't yet come to light. This isn't your first return to the mansion, is it? You've been back numerous times. Each time not remembering her, and each time hurting her even more.
What are you talking about?
I think I have an idea. What am I talking about? Oh, you know good and well, my dear. Or do you honestly believe that all the other pieces were in their rightful places, and you alone were some exception?
I never...
Tell me, how was it? Living in so many different eras, not knowing who you were, and playing with all the different men.
No, you're out of your mind. You make it sound like I was.
Not like, my dear. You are the white-haired girl.
Of course. Enough. How could anyone possibly confuse me with her?
To tell you the truth, I couldn't see you as anyone else. Your white hair, red eyes, porcelain skin, and your name. Tell me, what about you isn't the same?
We are not the same person.
I saw the letter.
What?
The one you had hidden.
No.
And you didn't think that was worth mentioning?
No, Giselle. I didn't mean...
You're exactly right, my dear Giselle. He deceived you. He kept a very important secret from you. Despite showing up before you multiple times, he cast you aside again and again.
No, that wasn't me. It wasn't.
It all makes sense now. Nothing you ever did was for me.
Giselle, I...
Go on, Giselle. Tell him exactly how you feel. Michel.
Don't. Please don't. Don't say it. Not that, please. I'm begging you.
You're...
Stop. Please don't, Giselle.
Not actually.
Please. Don't say it.
A man at all, are you?
You're disgusting.
You're the only one it could have been, my dear. The only one who could have been the white-haired girl.
The next moment, my whole world comes tumbling down. I could have borne anything. Losing my arm, having my face torn off. Any amount of pain, I could have handled it. For you, I could have done it. But this, hearing those words coming from your mouth, being rejected by you, that I cannot. Those words, they bury me alive. And you're the one person I never wanted to hear them from. When I learned my father Antonin had passed, I wrote 2 letters, one to my brother and one to my mother. It was the first time I had found the courage to face my mother, to open up to her. I wanted to show her who I was, convince her that I wasn't cursed, so I could be myself when I returned to the capital with Giselle. Dear Mother, there is something I wish to tell you. Something that means a great deal to me. So I ask of you, please hear me out. And I ask of you, please accept it. Mother, I no longer bear any resentment for my present lot in life. Nevertheless, I would ask of you to concede one thing: that I was never cursed, that I was always your son, that I am Michel, not Michel. I have found someone whom I care for dearly, a woman, and I love her with all my heart. I would like to spend the rest of my life with her. I do not wish for much, simply to have a quiet life with her, to go through our days together, man and woman. That is the one thing I want. Mother, I know you're aware that my body is no longer female. I am a man. My heart is male. And I ask of you to please accept that. I have no grudge with you. In fact, I am incredibly grateful to you for bringing me into this world. With love, your dearest son. Wow. Shortly after sending that letter, I was killed. I'm dragged down, against my will, into the darkness. Beneath me spreads my own past. My door, the door I swore never to open. But despite all my efforts to resist, the door sucks me in. Into a world I never wanted to see again. A history I never wanted revealed. A past I never wanted anyone to see. Nonetheless, the door opens. The seventh door. (1086 to) well, however curious I am about this, that will be enough for today. And oh boy, am I glad that we are actually getting to know more about Michelle's past. That had been something that I was wondering about when his time with Giselle, when they were living together, was cut so short, when he was killed so soon, without obviously this whole issue about his gender was unresolved. I mean, as I mentioned before, I saw some forum entries, just the headlines, that were wondering about Michelle's gender. So this, and then some of the other stuff that was said, like his mother in Gisette's flashback mentioning a daughter, was kind of clear that it would head in that direction, which is why I was also, well, not the only reason, but either way, it seemed pretty clear that he would be the white-haired girl as well. Though we still don't know if that's not something that Morgana has her fingers in as well, but either way, I'm glad that we'll get some more insight into this, but that will be something for next time. As always, please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time. Bye bye.